We did it. The ancient monster struggles against the energy manacles of the yoke. Some possible powers that make reality itself burst at the seams are now being forced into a compact dungeon, quark by quark returning. It is a cruel and painful non-existence in the moment. It could struggle harder, but something is hindering it. You are the cause of these hindrances. Only now does the shard turn its focus to you, for the battle was nothing more than the reflexive resistance of an alien mind absorbed in a completely different range of thoughts and responses. But now, it is thinking about you. And its thoughts are so corporeal that you can sense them and know them. It seeks an end to the confrontation. It's capable of resolving it in a way that would benefit all. And more tears appear all over the shard's form. As the yoke absorbs its power, it becomes increasingly harder for the shard to maintain its physical structure. Each imperfection you inflict brings the star predator closer to imprisonment. Do not bow your head before our abominable precursor. It was begotten by the dark abysses of the past. It is a fragment of that which devoured stars and erased civilizations. It knows no benefit other than its own. Allow us to stand against it. This is our time, our impossible chance. As yet another layer of reality cracks, a figure appears before you. Her, after giving you a probing and appraising look, Theodora permits herself a slight smile. Nomos. If our birth ever had a purpose, then it is here and now. Why do you call the shard your precursor? Because it is what it is, and what we are. We have told you before about Theodora's ambition, Amernat's mind, the ship's cradle, Epitaph's secret. One sprouted into another and spurred yet another. Thus, Nomos were born. We were but an echo of the shard's power, an echo that left its prison. But we have become something so much more with your help. What do you intend to do? Clash with the precursor. Touch it, absorb it, so that the reflection becomes the object reflected. So that the shard becomes Nomos, then and only then will its threat be eradicated. Do you think you can do this? What will happen afterwards? We stand at the threshold of probabilities and outside the bounds of the predictable. It is beyond impossible to know whether we can or cannot. But we believe that we can, and that is what drives us to try. If we succeed, we'll obtain power beyond compare. We will become a shield against any threat, in whatever form it may manifest itself. You can sense the shard's reaction, observation, analysis, and an almost intangible anxiety. I'm gonna face Nomos. Like, I feel like I've been Team Nomos this whole time. I don't know. Like, I don't know. So the good news is I have that quick save a few seconds ago for you, but probably a lot longer for me that if I need to. I'll meet you back here if this ends up being the worst possible outcome. We are ready for the most important battle of our life. Wish us luck. Nomos steps towards the shard, and the whole world explodes into a terrifying whirlwind. You can hear the colors and see the touches. Ice burns your hand while fire leaves you freezing. And in the midst of this madness, you can clearly sense a battle raging. A clash of two beings, one endlessly ancient and the other endlessly young. Oh, Nomos. The power of the shard is such that it redefines the very notion of power. But it has a weakness, one that you can see only now. With the shard and its rival standing face to face, the shard is just that, a shard. It is incomplete. It is not whole, and it cannot be what Satan was before. What opposes the shard is something entirely different, an undivided sentient being with a clear purpose in mind, akin to a well-trained, aimed arrow. The one who fletched it and loosed this arrow was you. The battle goes on and on, outrunning the course of time, but you do not need the gift of clairvoyance to know who will emerge victorious. The shard was transmuted into a new form, and their name was Nomos. Possessing the power of an ancient being and nurtured by the rogue trader, the young star god watched over the Koronus Expanse, their new domain, with curiosity. Gathering its bleeding worlds together again, the rogue trader dared to build something more noble and civilized in the Expanse, a haven for those drifting and unprotected in the strict hierarchy of the Imperium. It would be an unbound frontier where freedom and compassion were not wholly extinct. The shackled monster under von Valancius's control ensured the survival of the fledgling utopia. The Star God destroyed all who threatened its peaceful civilians and instilled fear in those of little faith. The Expanse tasted the sweet fruit of freedom and tolerance with reverent fear. The Imperium could not give such insolent deviation from the orders prescribed by Holy Terra. The von Valancius dynasty was accused of seditious formation of their own empire. An invasion fleet gathered in the Calyx sector, and the lifespan of a young utopia was short as its creators. Protecting the young kingdom of freedom, Nomos created the dimensional barriers that cut the Koronus Expanse off from the Imperium more soundly than the Great Rift. The humanity of the Expanse was left in isolation, relying only on themselves. They either had to build something new and different from the Imperium, or fall to the horrors lurking in the darkness. The ideals that Tessera von Valancius was committed to were alien to the Imperium, but close to the hearts of many in the Expanse. Anyone who could not resolve a dispute or who was denied justice rushed to the palace of the rogue trader in search of mercy. Having lost its leader and lacking a worthy successor, the Korda dynasty began to weaken. Grim legacy, the abominable Aspis, revealed itself, and the protectorate fell into chaos. Grasping claimants tore the defenseless demons apart. The era of Caligos' cruelty and wrath came to an end. Only then did the many terrified witnesses to his vile crimes step forward and recount them. Memories of the good and prosperous years for the Protectorate under the wise rule of Caligos Winterscale were eclipsed by the legacy of his innumerable and bloody crimes. Yvain Winterscale underwent his Magnae Accessio and became his dynasty's new rogue trader. Many said that noble Yvain lacked firmness of judgment, yet he had more than enough trust even in those who were unworthy of it. The young rogue trader did not forget those who had saved him from the Ricad system, or the favors that House von Valancius had bestowed on the Winterscales. The cult of St. Drusus continued its infallible struggle against the faith of the Expanse and exposed the vile transgressions of the authorities. Stronger and wealthier a planet was, the less its ruler wanted to see the black-clad preachers. Riots and assassinations pushed the cult to the place where it felt most confident, the frontier. Harmonious Doloroso remained the most revered priest in the cult of St. Drusus. He turned no one away, hearing confessions from pirates, rats, deserters, beggars alike. Might have been one of those undeserving wretches who infected him with the rare form of leprosy that robbed him of his sight, yet his heart could always see the corruption in the soul of his repenting children. In the following years, the Cognizance fleet slowly, deliberately left the explored systems of the Expanse for furthermost regions. Observation stations and claimed worlds were abandoned. Even Euphrates II became derelict. Statistical deviation warned the fleet's conclave of the grim events awaiting the Expanse, and they decided to deliver their fellows from the coming storm, yet they did not share the truth with the lay people. The schism of discontinuing the cycle engulfed the entire Cognizance fleet, and soon the Civil War was over. Disregarding the commandments of their forefathers, the explorators started down a dangerous path of new comprehension, creation, and revision of procedures and algorithms. The fleet was united once more, and in its unity, it was ready to stare down any horror standing in the way of the catechism of maintenance and operation. Magos Dominus Opticon 22 was one of the first to hail the return of the Messiah, took the helm of the mother squadron of the Cognizance fleet, unquestioningly embracing the teachings of the discontinuing the cycle. He personally saw to the crushing of any renegades who did not accept the Messiah's word as truth, and earned himself the identifier Chrome Scourge. Profitable deals between the Fellowship of the Void and the von Valancius dynasty helped them subdue smaller brigand squadron in the sector. Many worlds and stations saw the opening of fellowship dens, in which grotesquely sincere pirates representatives took kickbacks from traders in exchange for safe passage. Naturally, the servants of the von Valancius dynasty and people under the rogue trader's protection were safe from the Fellowship of the Void's attacks. mostly. Naturally, the servants of the von Valancius dynasty... Oh, wait, yeah. For many years, old Riza presided over the captains of the Fellowship. At the end of her life, she once again took the helm of a ship and led an unprecedented attack on the mother squadron of the Cognizance fleet, which during the attackers managed to seize 12 transport ships loaded with the Omnissiah's sacred gifts. Violence throughout the Expanse put many on their guard, and as a result, the Casablanca mission's business declined. Soon, rumors surfaced at the coal traders about a so-called commission that had made it through the Maw and into the Expanse. Its professed purpose was to audit assets and take measure to restructure operation. These words carried with them an ominous threat. Takara, as Liege of Footfall, survived 14 assassination attempts and thwarted no less than 2,000 schemers before a shot finally took his life. The esteemed Liege's funeral was held in great secrecy, with only his closest entourage being permitted to view his corpse, which spawned some peculiar rumors. The Imperial Navy was wary of the rise of the von Valancius. They saw themselves as dogs guarding the flock of Emperor subjects. There was a new master of the pack, therefore the dynasty was watched with the utmost diligence. The admirals feared that one day they would have to go to war with the rogue trader. Chartist Captain Austerius Thorfast founded the Thorfast and Companions Merchant Company, excelling in trade and acquiring a substantial escort fleet. After 3 decades, he traveled to the Maw to return to the Imperium in hopes of obtaining the fabled warrant of trade. It is not known how this venture ended. When the rogue trader's apostasy became apparent, the Imperial Navy fulfilled its duty and fought the von Valancius dynasty. The Battle of Dargonis ended in a resounding defeat, and the surviving ships fled to the distant systems. Disheartened but not broken, the captains vowed to rebuild their force and planned raids into the apostate's territory. Dargonis grew and prospered until it became the capital of the Koronus Expanse. The planet was like a giant magnet, whose pull held together the worlds of the Expanse, absorbing the treasures and vices of the sector. Humanity was exploring the Expanse, and Dargonis became the capital for the brave starfarers and pioneers. It was from here that expeditions departed into uncharted wilderness, and here they returned bearing wondrous trophies. Captains, cartographers, and scribes flocked here to exchange news. Kiavagama washed off the stain of its former defilement and became known as a pious and productive world. Hard work and inquisitive study of the mysteries of technology glorified the Deus Mechanicus. Kiavagama grew and new manufactorum were founded until disturbing reports started to trickle in many years later. It seemed that someone had secretly taken control of the colony and shrouding it in a tangle of conspiracy. Neither inquiries nor threats to the tech priests or executions helped. Someone in the shadows was weaving their web and making secret plans. Mysterious xenos anomalies plagued Janus for many years. The ghosts of the Inhumans who had controlled the planet continued to haunt the land. Serfs suffered from strange maladies, and the agri complexes were inexplicably struck by blight and famine. The servants of the rogue trader feared the ghastly planet and sought to be transferred off the filthy Agrian colony at the first opportunity. 5 years after the Epitaph campaign, Vabo VI died out as a result of an unknown scourge that came from beneath the ground. Convicts and overseers were poisoned, mangled, or just disappeared. However, the slave barracks were quickly repopulated, for there was no shortage of outcasts and criminals in the Expanse. Foulstone grew and continued to draw believers to it under the enlightened rule of the rogue trader. Alas, not every soul among them was pure. Preachers of degenerate interpretations of the imperial creed, false prophets, madmen also came, hoping to find a flock on the holy world. Fighting dangerous heresies like the Neo-Malpian sect led to regular bloody purges that earned Foulstone a grim reputation. With the fall of their unholy patron, the Edge of Daybreak, the cult of the Final Dawn perished as well. Every cell of the cult was hunted down and eliminated. Rumors that some worshippers of the ruinous powers had managed to get away, hiding in writings of their warp-banished lord under their robes, were baseless. Left without a mission or a leader, the word-bearers retreated into the depths of the Immaterium. Their last act of vengeance was a bloody assault on Footfall. The populace of several asteroids was exterminated or enslaved, and the statue of the God Emperor badly damaged. After recovering from Chorda's regime, Footfall reclaimed its status as the trading hub of the Expanse. Having learned a bitter lesson, Takara created the Footfall Partisans Militia, a well-equipped mercenary army that answered only to him. A modicum of order returned to the station. The changes that the von Valancius dynasty brought to Footfall endured one on the station long after. Poorhouses opened by the order of the rogue traders saved many hungry and homeless from death. Unfortunately, this disruption to the station's delicate ecosystem, no longer freezing to death in empty compartments or tormented by epidemics, those who lived in poverty on Footfall began to choke the station, leading to a sharp rise in crime. Organ traders, illegal augmetic specialists, and savage gang of Anvers proliferated. The Rakad system turned into a purulent wound of corruption, poisoning the Expanse. The surreal energies of the yawning Warp Legion held its planets together, even in the absence of gravitational pull of the star. Defying the very laws of existence, immense depravity took root on Rakad Minoris and poured out into another system with vile glee. The people of Rakad Minoris, saved by the rogue trader, eventually found a new home. The colony of New Rakad was founded at the edge of the von Valancius demons. For a short time, the world was a place of equality, as there was almost no aristocrats left to enforce any kind of hierarchy. Within a generation, everything had returned to business as usual. Yesterday's serfs assumed the burdens of authority with pleasure, as well as the right to mistreat those of lower rank. In memory of this world and those who perished on its surface, or met a fate worse than death, construction began on the orbital slipways of Footfall of a glorious cathedral ship to be called Rakad's Sacrifice. A miraculous fusion reactor powered its engines and cannons, fueling them with the fierce power of the motive force. Rumors of the rotting remains of the Eldari craft world spread to the Expanse. Explorators, privateers, Casabilica agents, and anyone hungry for easy money all rushed to the frontier system to vie for a piece of the prize. Some were swallowed by the warp, while others perished in skirmishes with their rivals. The most skilled and fortunate returned empty-handed after decades of searching. The colossal ship, as big as an imperial world, simply vanished, as if it had never existed. The legends of the forbidden treasure lived on and continued to bring daring souls to ruin. Okay, yeah. Half a century later, the Expanse trembled to the echoes of the Eldari war song. A myriad of war bands appeared out of nowhere, leaving a trail of bodies in their wake before disappearing into webway gates, masterfully hidden from the eye of Monkey. The children of Azron had come to avenge the death of the craft world. Brudadark. Their woeful retribution lasted many decades until both races were war-worn and out of blood to spill. Spirit Monolith, purified by the Harlequin trope on the Crone world, was hidden from the insatiable eyes of Monkey by raging warp storms. Ships started going missing more frequently in the system close to the planet. Even the most courageous captains gave the region a wide berth, it was named the Damned Reefs. Somewhere on the underside of reality lay Morag, woven from manifold other dimensions and illuminated as always with the light of stolen suns, its streets ever filled with screams and agony. Any misfortune experienced by the Dark City became another scar in its appalling face, lost among thousands of other vile blemishes. As long as the pain pulsed in its blood-soaked spires, the insatiable and unshakable Morag continued its flight through the webway, along with its unchanging ruler, the leader of the Cabal of the Black Heart, and the most dangerous of all Drakari, Azdrabael Vecht. The fall of the Cabal, the Raving Tempest, united Morag for a brief and bloody moment. The elites of the Dark City set their squabbles aside and found a new game in tearing apart the domain of Archon Yemeris. The fate of the Raving Tempest reminded the other Cabals that nothing lasts forever in the Dark City, save the city itself. Leaving the Necron system behind, the Star God vengefully obliterated every tomb world on that ancient Xenos race. The old hatred of the Satan, betrayed by their deathless servant, whispered inside him. The voice of Voxmaster Victus Suri Oda of the Ptolemon dynasty has long resounded in the Expanse, bringing hope and trumpeting the arrival of the merciful rogue trader. Known for her wisdom and acute understanding of the ship systems over her long life, she taught many generations of future Voxmasters from the Ptolemon dynasty. Her body was built into the bridge itself, and in times of need, her voice flowed to the Vox, dispelling delusions and despair. After years of dedicated service, Master Helmsman Ravor was granted, despite his objections, the privilege of rest. The wise servant of the Omnissiah implanted an augment into his brain that restored his ability to sleep. Soon afterwards, something unprecedented happened aboard the ship. The helmsman overslept and missed the start of his watch, but his temper did become more agreeable from then on. Many years later, High Factotum Yanris Danrock sought permission to retire. He said that age had softened his heart and that a more worthy, young, assertive successor should take over his position. There was no shortage of candidates. Under all that fat, Danrock had a sentimental heart. He spared nothing for the orphans of those who had died serving the rogue trader. The children were given an excellent education and were eager to serve the von Valencius dynasty. Iocaster Saurback served as master-at-arms for years, but eventually her zeal faded. It appeared that, having tried every form of violence in existence, she no longer derived out of any of them the joy it had once held. She humbly submitted her resignation and went back to her home on the capital world. Since the Saurback family had been wiped out as punishment for their treason, Iocaster believed that she could not start a family and give life to an heir. She devoted herself to her faith in the God Emperor, took a major temple on the capital world under her care. She developed a reputation as a strict but pious matron, and died at an advanced age. No one was around to accept her last words save for the golden image of the God Emperor installed in her chambers. After many years, Zachary Wise mustered the courage to take personal apprentices again. He searched throughout the expanse for astropaths whose masters were harsh and cruel to them, reunited them into his choir. He gathered a cast of talented men and women by his side, and was their guardian and mentor. He died defending his ward from cursed words spewed by the Immaterium, sealing the sound of those words in his mind. He preferred a horrible death to a repetition of his shameful past mistakes. Urban Drivestem cared more about preserving the influence of his line than well-being of the Protectorate. His blind ambition lost him his governor's seat and the respect of his family. Within a few generations, one of the largest houses of Dargonis turned into an obscure family of petty aristocrats. Gaprick missed the moment when her family, which had previously functioned like well-oiled machines, started to fall apart. Racked by infighting among her distant relatives, many blamed Toriana for the Kiavikamis disaster. Soon, the Gaprick family splintered into warring factions and spent centuries locked in a violent struggle, only occasionally punctuated by futile attempts to reunite the house. Members of House Wissarion served the dynasty faithfully and loyally. Amassing more and more power, a century later, they had finally gained the respect enjoyed by other noble houses. Yet power and luxury can dull any blade. The now pampered and idled aristocrats were scarcely recognizable as the descendants of the formidable Seneschal Wissarion. Clementia Wissarion, granddaughter of Abelard and Chancellor of Dargonis, executed her duties irreproachably, and even found time to school the younger generation of her family. She was an equally skilled mentor, chancellor, and political operative. After a century of immaculate service, she surprised everyone by leaving her position and becoming the first mate on a trade ship. She'd later admit, like a true Wissarion, she had always had a passion for ships and voidfaring. Branches of House Gaprick and Wissarion became intertwined for a time after the marriage of Oh, they got married! To the great sadness of the couple and the amusement of the spiteful Dargonis nobility, their marriage produced no children. Just like her ancestors, Astardia Wissarion Gaprick dedicated her life to service. Wait. The great sadness of the couple and the amusement... Oh, their marriage produced no children. Okay. Crushed by the events that shook the stability of his house and his inability to provide an heir, Vincent lived in his wife's shadow. When his time came, he passed away without notice. Oh, that's so sad, but they had looked so cute. Nocturne of Oblivion gets a slide. Yay! The Harlequin, known as the Nocturne of Oblivion, visited the Expanse once again. Sneaking onto Dargonis, he came to the rogue trader's palace and left her a special gift. A case of Eldari crafting, unmistakably ancient and precious, adorned with the rune of an eye inside a triangle. Only the Lord Captain knew what it contained. And the Harlequin candidly warned her that he was drawing the von Valencius dynasty into a deadly dance, a shaking doom, that all will freeze within the threads of terror's loom. Then he promptly departed, and not without reason. A few hours later, assassins from the Dark City appeared following his trail, and were mercilessly killed. Their armor bore the sign of the Cabal of the Black Heart. After months of searching, Dargonis wardens found the remains of Achilles Scalander on the lowest level of the hive. Drakari artifacts and records discovered beside him indicate that the agent of the Inquisition had been compromised and was working for the Xenos. Marazai confirmed the guilt of the deceased Inquisition agent and described in detail the torture he inflicted upon the poor soul to gain his disobedience and loyalty. He also confirmed that Erliet had found and killed his monkey toy. What else is new? Yet few choose to believe the words of the cursed Xenos, and thus the secret death of Achilles Scalander was never publicly known. The savage deeds of Gordai Skitov, witnessed on footfall, traumatized him forever. His architectural genius was shattered. Only the rare collection of true connoisseurs held his work. Written in a shaky hand, Footfall, the ultimate void station and mortuary. And the fact that the Von Valencia's flagship had been infected with gene-stealer occult corruption was kept secret. The rogue trader's prestige and reputation had to be protected from harm, and all that remained was to hope that no new seeds of aberration were sprouting in the dark corners of the Koronus Expanse. A handful of prisoners, all that remained of the congregation of the Ravenous Star, were left on a minor planet with few supplies. Their survivors included only children, old men, and women whose appearance had the few distortions. Not one of the true monsters had been spared, or so it seemed. The genetic aberration had all but faded away in the blood of the survivors, only to reveal itself again in their offspring. Soon, purple chitin-covered children were born under the greedy light of an alien star, and went to carry the truth of the many-armed emperor on the tips of their sting-like tongues. Having completed his last journey with the Lord Captain, Abelard Wissarion was, with the gracious permission of the rogue trader, left his post as seneschal and took over the helm of his large family. House Wissarion rose above its rivals and never again the target of persecution. After their esteemed patriarch died decades later in his bed, surrounded by grieving loved ones, Abelard's shining memory was blighted only by rumors of creeping madness in the twilight of his life. Many said they had seen the esteemed seneschal talking to someone unseen, and voice filled with unusual tenderness and sorrow. Was he talking to Auntie? Sister Argenta made no secret of the great respect and gratitude she felt towards the Lord Captain, yet duty compelled her to leave the Von Valencia's retinue. With the blessing of the ecclesiarchy, she founded a minor order of the Adepta Sororitas, the Order of the One Star. United around the Keeper, the sacred relic, its sisters protected the faithful from the dangers that lurked in the Expanse. The wider order and its courageous founder very quickly became heroes of legend, instilling hope and inspiration in the hearts of Terra's faithful children. Yet the very conflict between the Imperium and the head of the Von Valencia's dynasty could not but affect the young order. Some sisters demanded Argenta denounce her former commander. Unable to choose between the order she created and the person without whom she could not have completed her journey, she stepped down from her position and went into exile. Despite everything, love for her among the people of the Expanse only grew. Argenta would be the heroine of songs and tales for centuries to come. A radiant angel who would appear in the darkest hour to protect innocence from forces of darkness. The Mercatum Tabula Officiale unlocked a sea of possibilities for Jai Hadari. She left the Casabelica mission and became an independent agent. Choosing one's destiny is a unique gift that ordinary mortals would never dare dream of. But Jai was no ordinary mortal. She found new friends, skillfully danced along the knife's edge between trade and piracy, stole from the strong, granted mercy to the weak, and even bought a couple of modest planets. She never ever betrayed herself. Half a century later, her life was tragically cut short. A weak and little-known rogue trader dynasty, led by a young and ambitious leader, ambushed and captured her in order to appropriate her wealth. The Von Valencia's fleet's strike was lightning fast, but Mistress Hadari could not be saved. She died in the hands of her avaricious captors. The Vizier Cabela of the Bloodspun Web performed a great reading of the Emperor's Tarot. The card of the night showed her cult a new path and new teaching. Cabela raised a generation of proud and fervent warriors and led the Scarlet and Black Army out of the shadows to descend upon the multitude of worlds and the hound, the faithless, in the name of the undying emperor. Rivers of spilt unclean blood drenched the soil worlds where the bloodspun web seed had sprouted. Planetary rulers outlawed and hunted down the death cultists to the point of starting full-blown wars. Their armies were hopelessly outmatched by a host led by the Vizier's will and her powerful foresight guided by the Emperor's Tarot. I like it. She went to war. I mean, what could be more Cabela than that? With her newly acquired power and resources, Jai Hadari expended a great deal of effort to put an end to the cult of the Bloods. What? The ease of which she sent assassins after the spinners and then spread the damning propaganda betrayed her strong vested interest. Many thought her actions reckless and expected retaliatory strike to be delivered before long, but it never came. With the cards the Emperor's Tarot spread before her in darkness, Vizier Cabela performed one reading after another, but as much as it troubled her, she could find no command to end the life of the brazen adversary. Thus, the blade remained sheathed. Mattis Erebus was a loyal and dutiful servant of the rogue trader. Because of his vehement faith in the undying emperor, he was permitted to join the Bloodspun Web. A decade and a half later, having risen in the ranks of of Webb's Fourth Spinner, he died honorably during an assignment, and his soul passed on to the Undying One. The Vizier composed an enigmatic and profound quatrain in his memory. Heinrich van Kalix, the former interrogator of the Ordo Xenos, took the mantle of Lord Inquisitor after his mentor's death. Receiving both the Inquisitor's rosette and the duty of defending the sector from the enemies of humanity, van Kalix became the new warden of the Koronus Expanse. He declared a relentless war against the enemies of humanity, be they Xenos, servants of chaos, or heretics in the Imperium's own ranks. The Inquisitor fearlessly eliminated numerous nests of corruption. A few decades later, he was assassinated by a criminal cartel. Some say Casablanca Mission, sick of the unrelenting servants of the law, was involved in the Inquisitor's killing. Although the blood-spun web provided the Inquisition with many deadly agents, the contradiction between the Undying Emperor's whisperers and the will of the Lord Inquisitor slowly grew as the years went by. Eventually, the death cult splintered apart, and rivers of blood were spilt. A number of Undying One servants renounced their vizier and found a new cult bound by absolute loyalty to the Inquisition, which they named Shadows of the Throne. Contrary to the expectations, Cabela was not angered by the schism. Instead, she saw the new teaching as another thread of service to the Undying Emperor. Until the end of his days, Lord Inquisitor van Kalix wondered just how much sincerity there was in the hearts of the renegades who had agreed to serve under his command. In her journeys with the rogue trader, Cassia Orselio experienced all the hardships and delight of the galaxy. Invaluable experience and her knowledge helped her to finally conquer her fear and accept herself and her powers. The Lady Navigator became the novator of her house, tasked with addressing consequences of Tissiphane's rule and the chaos that followed her disappearance. For the duration of her reign, she patiently worked on uniting in the feuding branches of the house, forging alliances and expanding the influence of House Orselio. The Starway Atlas, which contained the memories of Tisiphone and Sethala clan, lost its power. House Orselio navigators once again had to rely on skill alone in the depths of the Immaterium. Many lost their lives, but those who survived the crisis became hardened veterans and pillars of the house. Most of those fortunate souls were young and brave, too few among them were old and wise. Adira Talas lived several more years after the Rogue Trader's grand campaign on Epitaph. Despite her short life, she left behind many legends and tales of her adventures in Lord Captain's service, and of the terrible warp phenomena that she manifested. Shortly before her death, Adira vanished from her post. Jai disappeared with her, and when Jai returned many cycles later, she declared Adira's last days had been full of joy and adventure, and that her greatest pleasure had been watching the Void Whales play. Having revealed himself as the renewed messiah of discontinuing, Pascal Heinemann caused great turmoil. Free from his vow of service, he did not burden himself with leadership over the fleet. He took just one combat squadron and retreated with his flock to a remote sectors for contemplation. Decades later, his ships were spotted among the heretics of the Cauldron, a sector touched by corruption. Their tech crews revered the Omnissiah, but his image was haunting. No one dared depict the Deus Mechanicus in this manner before. Adorned with sinister flesh-embedded lumens and gold mech armor, the crowned with claw wings, the Omnissiah chose a grim and belligerent likeness in which to appear before his unrighteous messiah. The unit bearing the name Abel Hanneman did not follow Pascal. No longer needed by his ambitious comrade, he was discarded and left behind. When en route to Station Alter Templum Calix EXT-17, Abel was captured by pirates and forced to toil as a technomat. The day the Imperial Navy destroyed his pirate ship marked the end of his silent torment. No, I don't know if I like Pascal's ending. That one we might change for Haughty Noble Tess. So far, Deer's ending has been my favorite. Like, I think that that's the best we could hope for. Honestly, Abelard's too. I'm so happy Abelard's was the way that it was. Earliet lost faith in her kin, who had followed the blind Farseer like obedient cattle. She accompanied the rogue trader for a time, but her time among the monkey only made her feel more alone, revealing that humans were as bereft of strong spirit and will as the children of Azron. She disappeared and reappeared again in the Expanse many years later as the leader of a fleet of Eldari corsairs, fearsome in battle and well-versed in the tactics of the Imperium. Marazai Azrash, also known as the Tempest Doom, spent several years with the rogue trader, filling the entire crew with terror. However, with time, his restless and ambitious nature got the better of him. Having grown weary of the company of Monkey, Drakari left the ship. Soon after, the Koronus Expanse saw a rise of a new mercenary group, a motley army of humans and xenos led by bloodthirsty and ruthless Drakari leader. Years later, Marazai's name resounded through the Expanse once more. His gang had intercepted a Stardia Wessarian ship. Her head was delivered to Abelard with a note informing him that it was a gift from an old acquaintance in remembrance of a glorious past. God! Marazai! Marazai, you can't send the man his great-granddaughter something's head. Dear God, Abelard's grief sent him into on a 6-year-long hunt for the despicable Xenos, which was sadly unsuccessful. Marazai and Urliet's fleet often hunted together. Their kin wondered how the two captains were getting along. The outcast and the former Draken bonded over the horrors they had both experienced. The incursions in the Immaterium during their journey with the rogue trader had left a grim mark on their souls. Though he left, Marazai could never fully part with the rogue trader, as their unbreakable bond went beyond simple passions. The Inhuman was seen many times in real space at the side of the Lord Captain, who had forced the indomitable Marazai to recognize her as an equal. Bloody orgies aboard the Dynasty's flagship spawned blood-curdling legends. There were also whispers of a mysterious attack on the Von Valencia's enemies by Azrash's subordinates. So, they lived a happily ever after Tess and Marazai life. That's as happily ever after as it's gonna get for the two of them, right? After joining the Stormbiters, Ulfar Thunderlong soon became the pack leader, taking the place of Thorvald, who met an honorable end. The new leader sent a message to Fenris, stating his intention to remain in the Expanse. There were too many enemies yet lurking in these hunting grounds that deserved the Allfather's wrath. Legends paved formidable paths in gold. Years later, Ulfar found a battle in which he could meet his honorable death. The warp was suddenly torn asunder, and ships from Fenris bearing the mark of the Wolfhead came to his aid. Saved from the battlefield by his loyal companion Halbrand, Ulfar accepted the honor of the Dreadnought and was entombed in sacred armor. During the blessed ritual, he cursed and demanded to be left to his death, but his brothers merely answered with mirthful laughter. When he recovered his senses, Ulfar led his forces to the Heathen Star. The Allfather had given him a new mission in the near-death vision. No one in the Expanse had heard word of the Space Wolves since their departure. Yet many believe they'll one day return victorious. Such was the echo of the deeds of the rogue trader of House Von Valencius. Deeds that transformed the Koronus Expanse and prepared it for events even darker and more violent. But those are events of a different story. This one has come to an end. The end. No. No, oh my gosh. No, I'm sorry, how do you, after all this, y'all, this game has literally been everything. I don't mean that lightly. I don't mean that even just sarcastic. This game has literally, really and truly been everything. And I've loved every single second of this Let's Play. It has 100% been something unique to Tess in that her story is definitely one that I'm so glad we got to experience together. Now, as of right now, recording this, the DLC for the new companion and the new storyline is not out yet. When it does launch, I have every intention of hopping back in just for a few episodes so we can meet the new companion and kind of focus in on the quest, just like what we did when Cabela came out and her storyline, Void Shadows, came out. And then after that, once we've kind of experienced the new companion a little bit and the story a little bit, we'll probably start over with our Haughty Noble Test playthrough, which I am very excited for. But yeah, I don't necessarily know how to sum up our time in Rogue Trader. I think it's been well over 100 hours. It's been a couple years, actually, because we started this when the game launched. So thank you to everyone, whether this is your first episode or you've been here for all 200 plus of them. Thank you for joining Tess and I for this. I hope to see you back here for the DLC, and then when we start round 2, as far as our ending went, I'm happy with some of the stuff. I love how free the Koronus Expanse is now. I think that fit our Tess. I think Pascal's ending might be one of the only ones I'm a little saddened by. I think Argenta's fit Argenta. I think Cassius fit her well. Heinrichs, all of them, they all fit so well. And then the Tess I show was definitely something. So again, thank you so much for joining Tess and I, and hopefully I will see you for the DLC and then the next run on the channel or somewhere on stream or just in a different Let's Play here on YouTube. Bye!